Hello, Tech Pros, episode 146.
Something that I've been processing through and advising others with lately is focusing on the seeds for your business rather than the fruits. And so eventually you get in the swing of things, you get caught up with how much revenue is coming in. How much revenue is coming in? Is there money? Am I making money? Can I eat food?
Welcome to the podcast where I chat with professionals who are getting the job done using technology 7 days a week. Each week we start with Motivation Monday. Tuesday is about productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people and communication, Saturday, entrepreneurship, and Sunday, being unplugged. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Veronica Kirin. Happy Saturday, Veronica.
What's up? Hello.
What's up? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Are you rocking and rolling and busy this weekend, or are you having an unplugged weekend?
Oh, God. A little bit of both as usual, but you know that I try very hard to stay unplugged on Saturdays and Sundays. I'm actually wrapping up my first solo art show, just as like a total aside. So I have to stay after that in order to get everything down and out of the space. But other than that, total relaxation.
Awesome. Well, Veronica Kirin is an anthropologist turned serial entrepreneur. She loves working closely with clients to help them reach their goals. Her first business, Green Cup Design, began as a freelance web design venture and has grown into a digital maintenance for small businesses. And we're going to get all into the nuts and bolts of all that, plus more. You've hinted at in an email that I've seen a lot more things that are going on in Veronica's entrepreneurship life. But speaking of Unplug, why I brought it up is because Veronica has been a guest on Hello Tech Pros. On episode 70, we talked about being unplugged and how it's so important for Veronica and for all of us to draw a line between work and life, and I really highly suggest going and listening to that. That was a really, really huge episode for me personally, because, as a software developer and as a manager in IT, I very much respected my family and my unplugged time. And I did a really, really good job, I think, in making sure that myself and my colleagues all unplugged and got away from work and did things outside of that. But now in the entrepreneurial world, as I'm starting Hello Tech Pros, it's been actually very, very difficult for me to draw those lines. And so, Veronica, thank you so much for coming on episode 70 to remind me and to remind the audience that even though we're trying to do all the things, we're trying to work the normal jobs and we're trying to build businesses and products and everything else that's going on, we really need to prioritize the other things in life, just the life things as well as business.
Yeah. I actually heard a really great analogy about that recently, so I'm sure you've heard people talk about filling up your cup and all of that, but if you're working constantly, you're constantly pouring yourself into other things, but it is only through input from external experiences that we gain creativity and ideas for our business. So there's a book called The Artist Way, and she suggests taking yourself on an artist date. But this goes for anybody, where go out and do something completely unrelated to whatever you're working on, because you'll get input and it'll eventually feed into whatever you're working on in ways that you may not have originally imagined.
Man, that's so amazing. I'm going to have to take a look at that. Take a look at that book and see what kind of inspiration I can draw from different things. I've noticed that, just as an aside, my consumption of entrepreneurship things like podcasts and books and stuff like that has actually dropped quite a bit, because I'm doing the actions, I'm putting it in place, and I'm only looking out tactically when I need specific advice on how to set up a Facebook ad or how to do a XYZ, whatever the next thing is that I'm struggling with doing. That's what I'm looking for, business advice things. But I love the idea of kind of stepping back, unplugging from the business every now and then, and looking at art or traveling or, spending time with friends and family, just to get inspiration from the rest of the world that then I can bring back and apply to the business.
Yeah, that's a really great way to put it. And I've actually found that for myself too, that as I have grown myself as an entrepreneur, my my social activities have reinforced it, but my reading is usually, like you said, kind of like a step away from being an entrepreneur because I like it is my life. So and then, you're talking about turning off. If everything you read is about being an entrepreneur, your brain is actually not going to ever switch gears.
Right. Yeah. So tough. So yeah, unplug every now and then, unplug, have limits throughout the day. What time of day you unplug and turn the brain off and turn the business off, and then have those times either on the weekend or, if you work for yourself, make it a Tuesday, Thursday, or whatever your time is, but take that time to unplug. And you can hear all of that detail if you go to hellotechpros.com/70. Again, that's episode 70. Draw a line between work and life. Veronica Kirin. That was such a great episode. I even gave you a shout out. I don't know if you heard it on episode 100, but a big celebration episode with episode 100. And I listed out some of the kind of top episodes that really, really helped me get to 100 episodes. And Veronica, that was a huge one for me because this is fast paced. This entrepreneurship stuff is fast paced, and doing this daily podcast, I mean, it is nonstop, literally every day working on this stuff. But if I don't take your advice and take that time to unplug, I'm going to burn out way too quickly. So that episode for me really, really helped me be a better entrepreneur. So thank you so much.
Wow. Gosh, I feel honored. Thank you.
You're welcome. So let's talk about your business. Let's get into what you're doing at Green Cup Design and all the other things that you've got working on. So tell us first about maybe pre-entrepreneurship journey. Were you an entrepreneur kid growing up, or were you working on other things and then switched into entrepreneurship?
I guess I was an entrepreneur kid. My parents were not. So I didn't exactly get it from anywhere specifically, but I grew up during the Beanie Baby craze, and I learned to sew at a very young age. And so I found myself quickly using my sewing machine to create Beanie Baby beds and then selling them around the block. And I mean, I was selling them for like $5. And so I guess that shows some sort of entrepreneurial spirit. I was always doing things like that, just kind of like coming up with little things to sell. But it wasn't until I got laid off from my first career that I decided to take the full dog leg and just not ever reinsert myself into the, working market, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So what was it about that transition period of getting laid off where you said, you know what, I want to do things on my own and I want to start my own thing?
Well, I was working for an SEO company, a search engine optimization company, and I had been the director for 2 years, but during that period of time, we were sold to someone who I had to teach how to use Facebook 3 times, and he still didn't understand. And so for a internet company to be sold to somebody who doesn't understand the internet, the writing was on the wall. Yeah, I know. So, I mean, like, I can't blame him too much. I don't want to be cruel because he purchased the company because he saw it as a retirement opportunity, which that makes sense logically, but he really didn't know anything about the industry. So I knew that I wanted to make a change, and I guess it's unfair of me to say that it took the layoff for me to totally become an entrepreneur, because I had been running a nonprofit on the side that I had started myself. And so I was taking a couple classes just from a community organization to find out more about finances and all the little nitty-gritty things I felt like I was missing. And so that was that last little margin of where I knew I was going to get laid off. So I started using the knowledge that I'd gained as the director at that company to barter websites to the women who were in the class with me. And so they traded me like, I don't know, one of the women was doing sewing for like, her specialty was making aprons. And so she made me like a custom French style apron, not French made, that like just totally conjured bad images in my head. But so she made me a custom apron, and another woman made me like a whole line of bath and beauty products that just totally homemade. And I made these websites, and so I learned kind of crash course how to make websites. And so when I was laid off, I had a portfolio, and I just went it on my own, basically because I had seen my livelihood be affected by somebody who didn't have any reason to be involved with what he was involved in. And then I bore the consequences. And so I just didn't want to be in that life anymore. So that's when what has become Green Cup Design began. The first website I built that I charged $300. And this was only 4 years ago. So like inflation hasn't taken place that much since then. But yeah, so that was the major leap into for-profit entrepreneurship for me.
So, I mean, first of all, I think we need to start a support group for us technical people who work in these areas where we're doing online things, where we're doing website design, where we're doing, software development, and our bosses or our clients or whoever just doesn't get it. And, we've had Jeff Maxwell on the show in the past on a couple of different episodes. I'm going to have to get him on to tell his story about the time he blew up and told I'll let him tell the story, but told someone, do you know how the internet works?
Yes.
And so we need to start a support group. Maybe guys and gals, join my Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack, and you can join Veronica and I and tell us your do you know how the internet works stories, because I think we've all been there in that situation that people just they don't know, but more importantly than that, they don't care. They don't care to know how it works. They're just trying to run their business and invest money into a company that's going to pay off, 7% annually or whatever they're trying to get out of it. I don't know what this individual is trying to get out of this new world that he was in, and why he cared nothing about the internet, nothing about Facebook, and just couldn't get it, yet he wanted to be involved in this company. So that kind of blows my mind, first of all. And second of all, I love the idea of bartering services with other startups, with other entrepreneurs, especially when you're first getting started, right? Because you don't have a portfolio at that point. You don't have, maybe you do, maybe you don't have the experience to go out and say, hey, world, like, here's my stuff and here's what I can do. But you're just trading services or trading products with friends and saying, oh, I know how to do this and you know how to do that. Well, instead of like putting all this accounting and booking and marketing and stuff in place, just like, I'll give you some of my stuff for free and you give me some of your stuff for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a good experience in like dealing with people who may or may not actually know what the internet does, like you said. And so learning how to talk to people in that language and kind of digest it for them, which I've always been good at because I'm an anthropologist, but there was that factor. And then there was also the factor of just like, it's networking because they're not paying you. So the level that you're on is a little bit more even with them. And I don't recommend bartering like all the time because you'll never make a living. Right. And it's something I still struggle with because I just want to help people. But then they're kind of like on your same playing field just because you've traded services. And so then they become somebody who can recommend you, but they also become somebody you can stay in touch with and share stories with.
That's awesome. And so throughout that process, you did great job for these individuals. You built their websites, and it wasn't exchange for money. It was exchange for other services or products, mm-hmm. which, it's not going to pay the bills, but it got you experience and it got you, awesome things that you wanted anyway. So that's cool. But now you got to the point where, okay, I have this portfolio and I need to come up with a pricing for my business. Where did you come up with the pricing for your first website when you decided, okay, $300, that sounds reasonable?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm not a numbers person. I am a social scientist. And so my brain goes towards patterns and people and things like that. I almost failed statistics when I was at university even. So I think I just I made some sort of internal decision where I said, okay, I have a very small portfolio, but I know what I'm doing and I can put together something reasonable. And we'll just call it a starter website. So, they don't expect the world out of me. And so they were only just little like 5-page websites that I was building at the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know why I was charging like $300, but I think that had something to do with it. I was just so new. I figured I'd discount myself.
Well, I think this is a very important thing because a lot of us struggle. I very much struggle in this area as well. You know, as a new entrepreneur, how do you price something? And there's, okay, well, I could go out and do the research on what other people are charging, but then you have to factor in, okay, do I have the expertise that these individuals do? Do I have the experience? Do I have the marketing stuff that they do? So I don't think that's anything wrong with the amount that you charge. I think it's a process that we all have to learn of how to price ourselves. And just, first of all, congratulations for just putting stuff out there and just deciding to, I don't know, just pull a number out of a hat or whatever you did and say, okay, $300, that sounds good. You did it. What was the lesson that you learned throughout that process of building that first website or those first few websites that you did for $300?
Mostly I learned what would work and what didn't and what I was good at. So I was challenged with very minor things that I hadn't done before, like connecting a website to an Etsy account and what's an API and how do I make that work with the website. So little things like that. Of course, you know, as an entrepreneur, you never say no. You never say, I can't do that. You just say, okay. And then you go home and figure it out and probably cry a little bit because you're scared.
Right.
So that's pretty much how I've learned is I almost always say, yeah, I can do that. And then I just figure it out. I think it was only like maybe 2 or 3 websites that I did for that price point, and I quickly doubled it. The most important thing I could have done was get a mentor or business advisor. And his advice has always been, even to this day, when I feel like I might have capped out my market, his advice, he always responds, well, has anyone said, no, that's too much? And usually my answer is no one's actually rejecting me because of price point. And so he says, well, then that means you need to raise your prices again. So that's a really good takeaway lesson that's how I've determined, like, obviously I'm not charging $300 a website anymore. But that's how I figured, like, I look at my clientele base because price point changes what kinds of clients you get. And like, I could charge $40,000 a website, I'm sure. But that would bring in only really large corporate type companies. And I don't know that I want to work with that type of company. So that's a factor as far as high pricing, but low pricing, you get people who don't know how to use the internet. So you have to, you know, for this type of thing, you have to decide what the middle ground is and just kind of watch not only what their reactions are when you give them a proposal, but also like what type of clients you're receiving.
That's so interesting to me because I don't think I've ever thought about it that way, right? So I think of what's my value proposition, what am I bringing to the table, and you know, what's the value of that product to kind of anyone, to everyone in the market or just to the marketplace. But I love the idea of really first defining what type of clients do I want to work with, right? Do I want to work with enterprise clients? Do I want to work with Fortune 500, Fortune 100, big companies, 10,000 employees, and you know, all the bureaucracy and red tape and legal stuff that comes with them? Or do I want to work with you know, mom and pop shops that are, you know, working from the garage? They have no idea what the internet is, and they're just trying to, you know, live life on their meager income, right? Or find some sweet spot somewhere in the middle. At first, define who the ideal client is, who the ideal customer is, and then talk about the pricing model.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly think about hours. You know, how many hours does it take me to build a basic website and then, you know, add-ons and things like that. But really, for me, it comes down to the human factor. So that's how it's worked for me so far.
So, so as your business has grown, have you, as you're building websites, is each website kind of a custom one-off design with kind of individual pricing for each customer, or do you have like a package deal where you say, okay, you can order my bronze, my silver, my gold package, and it comes with XYZ, and everything is just kind of prepackaged in it, and that way people don't have to make choices?
Well, that's a little bit of the fork in the road that I faced about a year ago. So in your introduction of me, you mentioned that we started out as a web design company, have now transitioned into online support for small businesses. So to answer your question in short, yeah, we tend to do flat rate package style work that usually comes with like, this is your basic thing, and then here are your add-ons. So say somebody comes to me and says, I want a website and I also need e-commerce. E-commerce is a significant build on to a website. So just the basic build of the website is a quantifiable number, and then an e-commerce number is, its own. It has so many variables, so that becomes an additional number. But a lot of our work has moved away from one-off because I found myself kind of going through the ebbs and flows, and I can hustle, but there's actually been some really interesting articles I've been reading lately about how hustling is actually the best way to burn yourself out. You don't want to hustle all the time. You want to get into a groove. And so for me, hustling meant going out and sales and cold calls. And that's not something that I enjoy. And that's what was needed in order for me to maintain a steady income doing one-offs. So we still do the web design, and we still do some basic one-off type things like business photography or videography. But the most of what we do is kind of recurring things that support small businesses when, like you were saying, they didn't get into business to play with the internet. They got into business because they have a product to sell or because they have a passion. Right. So then we will, quote unquote, play with social media for them, but in a scientific way that is informed by analytics and all of those things. So I still get that like enjoyment of helping sustain a small business, but we've entered more of a sustaining world as opposed to just have a momentary relationship and then leave.
So, and then on top of this, you've got a lot of other ventures going on. So, Veronica, in just a moment, I want to ask you about all the other things. You've got a podcast, you've got Kickstarter campaigns, you've got potential books coming out. I mean, we got a lot of stuff that we could talk about that I'm going to ask you about in just a moment. But first, we're going to take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by Minio Cloud Storage. Minio is a cloud object storage server for developers and DevOps written in Go. The Go programming language is the emerging language of choice for modern cloud infrastructure projects, and it allows Minio to be highly concurrent and lightweight. Minio is Amazon S3 compatible, built with microstorage architecture in mind, but at its heart, Minio is simple, scalable, and supported by a passionate developer and user community. In episode 89 of Hello Tech Pros, I talked with A.B. Periasamy, one of the founders of Minio, about the importance of community support and recruiting software developers who are as passionate about their product's code as artists are of their art. Check out that episode at hellotechpros.com/89 and check out Minio Cloud Storage at minio.io. That's minio.io. Are you new to podcasting? Are you looking for a fast, high-quality, yet budget-friendly podcast production team? Let TransSource Media take care of you. With a team of professional audio and video editors, writers, and graphic artists, they can help you build your podcast from planning, post-production, and platform submission. Using only cutting-edge software and studio equipment, they're here to make each and every show sound at its best. To get a free quote, please visit www.transsourcemedia.com or send them an email at marketing@transsourcemedia.com or call them at 209-505-5693. TransSource Media, transforming businesses through the power of multimedia. Okay, we're back with Veronica Kirin. We've been talking to Veronica about her startup as a web designer. First, getting that client, those first few clients, just as a barter system, as a trade. Hey, I'll trade you a website for an apron or a something else, and then kind of move into, okay, now I need to start pricing it. What's that first pricing model? And just pick a number, put it out there. And if they say yes, then you're probably charging too less, and slowly learn, okay, how to increase that price and how to really package the product and what that product is that you're going to be selling, so that you know what that consistency is and what you're going to deliver and how many hours it's going to take. And then as you start learning more and more things, it gets more complex. Then you're going to have different packages for different customers. And I love the part about really identifying what customers you want to work with, and then set your pricing model, and then set your product portfolio out there, so that you attract the right clients that you're actually looking for, instead of accidentally getting a Fortune 100 client that's going to be way over your head and way too much to deal with, or just getting a whole bunch of really, I don't know, cheapskate people that they want to nickel and dime you for every little thing, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then after that, we talked about how you kind of transitioned and grown into this really digital maintenance shop for small businesses, and just handle all their things on a recurring basis. And it's not just the website. That's the first step. That might be the entry, the gateway drug into working on all this digital world. There may be e-commerce, there may be social media, there may be SEO, there's all these different things. So how you do that. But on top of Green Cup Design, Veronica, you're doing so many other things. I can't even keep up with it. So maybe just give us a highlight, like a bullet list of what are all the other things besides Green Cup Design that you're working on.
Okay, so I'll stick with the current stuff.
Okay, fair enough.
So the thing I'm most excited about, because it's happening tonight, is I'm installing my first solo art show at a local coffee shop. And so I'm just kind of nerding out about that. And we talk about unplugging and having hobbies. And so that's been my hobby, is taking bone and wiring them to wood with different things. And but on top of that, you mentioned a Kickstarter. I did a Kickstarter last year. It was called the Untold Stories Project, and that's kind of like a pending name. I don't know what I'll eventually call it. But the Kickstarter paid for me to drive across the United States in 40 days, and I visited 40 states and interviewed over 100 people born before 1940. And I never realized the number 40 recurs like that. And so I interviewed them about how technology has affected our society, because they are the people that can actually make that commentary, since they grew up without it. Some of them even grew up without running water and electricity. So I think that's a really important critique, talking about technology, since most of the articles that come out today are written by people who grew up with technology. Mm-hmm. So that's where the book will come from as well. And I'm in the middle of still transcribing all those interviews, which is critical to the book getting written. So I'm kind of at a stall point, and I'm antsy to get it done. What else am I working on? Yeah, so the podcast, I interview fellow entrepreneurs who got a degree in something and then are probably doing something different from that degree. So my example being myself, I'm an anthropologist, and I am a serial entrepreneur that builds websites and does coaching and all kinds of stuff. And then I also do coaching and speaking engagements specific to women entrepreneurs in order to support that demographic. So I think that might be like the major bullet points of what I have going on right now.
That's a lot. That's enough.
It's actually not compared to some of the moments in my past. I think I don't know how else to describe it. I'm actually thinking about writing another book about being an entrepreneur and how to have conversations describing what you do with people who aren't entrepreneurs, because that like there's a language barrier and a barrier to understanding. But basically, it's like after you found your first business, you've kind of like pierced the veil and realized that it's a lot simpler and maybe even more fun than you had originally expected. It's probably more work than you ever expected, but there's like this veneer over owning your own business, because you look at companies like McDonald's or Herman Miller or Apple, and it's like, how could I make that leap from like a garage to a multi-billion-dollar company? Like, right. You can't see that line, and so you don't do it. But once you do it, even though you're not making $1 billion, probably some people are, it's so much, you just like enjoy it so much that, at least for me, I kind of went bonkers and just started starting all kinds of different businesses and startups, and just, I got out of control for a while.
No, I totally get it. I can definitely see myself definitely branching out in the future. I'm actually actively working on. I haven't released anything. I haven't made any announcements. But actually, before I started Hello Tech Pros, right, I was doing too many things, but never actually launching and getting it out there. And I had to switch from working on things for a week or two and then abandoning it to just make a list in Evernote. I have an Evernote notebook called Idea Junkie, where it's just anytime I have these wild, crazy ideas, I log it in there and it's captured so I can always come back and evaluate it later. But I can see that that's like an itch that needs scratched, right? Is going through the process and saying, hey, can I take this idea and can I make something out of it, right? Can I transition that idea into an actual thing, whether that thing is whatever, a book, a podcast, a video, a software, a website, or whatever it is. But can I go through the process of turning an idea into something that can be delivered to other people and consumed by other people? I can definitely see how that's kind of like exciting and how you would want to do more of it. But how do you keep up with it all? Okay, so you got your first business and it started and it's going well. How do you juggle all the things in the air at the same time?
Well, you made a really good point there, that I had to learn for myself, that if you are always doing all kinds of different things all at the same time, you'll either burnt out or you won't be able to manage everything all at once. So I had to learn how to temper myself and my ideas, and turn it more into like a 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year plan. So I actually have several ideas percolating that I'm super excited to get to, but I need to make sure that my current ventures, which is Green Cup Design and then the coaching, start to stabilize. Of course, Green Cup is much more stable than the coaching since the coaching is much newer, before I start leaping again. So it's like, okay, start maybe one thing once a year and then give yourself some sort of time frame in order to test it and say, okay, like if either I discover something that makes this not a feasible project. For example, I tried to overhaul the student loan industry a couple years ago and quickly discovered that unless you're a multi-billion-dollar investment firm, the numbers don't play, which is why, that's a horrible industry in the first place, because it's just like insane amounts of money you're talking about all the time. But so you either discover something that like says, okay, this idea won't work anymore, or it's working, but it's been a year and I'm putting more time and energy and thus money into it than I'm getting out of it or whatever. And temper your work in that way. With regards to my day-to-day, I have created schedules so that I always hit certain goals within a week for each organization. So with Green Cup Design, Wednesdays are blog days. On my coaching, I do a Monday inspiration, I do a blog, I do a entrepreneur Q&A on Thursdays, which is a Facebook Live thing that anybody can hop on. I think I've had you on one time. And so because they're scheduled, I don't forget to do them. And so even if I have to step away from the company as a whole for a minute, or if it's slow or whatever, to the external appearances, it's still going in the same way it always went. And in our field, trust is incredibly important, especially with coaching. So you've got to be consistent.
Great stuff. I love this process of tempering the ideas and really kind of select one every year that you're going to focus on and say, okay, now I'm going to focus on 2016. I'm going to focus on the one thing. For me, that's the Hello Tech Pros podcast and kind of the business around that, right? And then, okay, wait till 2017 before I really, really jump in full steam ahead with starting another thing, because then I've had a year of, okay, yes, Hello Tech Pros is good to go and it is running and working successfully, and it's just kind of maintenance and growth mode. And now I can spend some additional activities over here in building something else. Or, you know what, maybe it's time to abandon it and it's not working out. I don't have the numbers, or I just changed my mind and it's not something I care about anymore. And so give it a year of really focus on it to make that decision. Then next year, you're either in maintenance mode with product number one, business number one, and you're starting business number two, or now you're just kind of starting from scratch, right? And so that way, 3-5 years from now, you may have 3 or 4 or 5 different things that are all going on. but the first couple are really established. They're solid. They're out there. They're branded. Like they're working, right? They're being successful, and now you're just adding to your portfolio of other things. But still having a schedule that's lined out, and where you're not feel like, oh my gosh, I'm juggling so many balls, I don't know how to keep up with them. They're on the calendar, and if it's important to you and you need to, whatever maintenance things you need to do on the existing business, it's on the calendar. Any of the growth things you need to do for the new business, it's on the calendar, and that way you don't lose track of things.
Right. I said I'm not the greatest person with numbers, but at the same time, a business has to be somewhat scientific. And I heard somewhere that, you can look at a business as a hypothesis. And so any hypothesis needs a testing period. And so you just, if your business model is the question you're looking to answer, will this work? Then you need a testing period that is reasonable in order to execute it and see if it actually does work or if it doesn't work.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, we've talked about so many different things on this particular podcast, from how to get started to how to price to how to evolve your business over time to when to launch the next businesses. But Veronica, if you could sum it up for us with any final words of wisdom for the audience, then the best way that we can connect with you in all of these different ventures, and then we'll say goodbye.
Oh God, you just challenged me. I think a lot of times it's really easy to get caught up in the excitement of what you're starting or what you're working on, and you'll forget the nitty-gritty of either the planning, like we talked about, putting it on a calendar, or working your business model. Something that I've been processing through and advising others with lately is focusing on the seeds for your business rather than the fruits. And so eventually you get in the swing of things, you get caught up with how much revenue is coming in. How much revenue is coming in? Is there money? Am I making money? Can I eat food? The money won't come if you're not planting seeds. And that's what you do in those first couple months of your business. And then we eventually forget how to do that. So planting seeds means for different things for every business. It might be networking. It might be teaching. It might be joining different associations. But caution yourself to not get too caught up in the excitement of starting things and forget to plant those seeds so that growth can happen. As far as finding me, I am on most social media platforms at VM Kirin.
Awesome. And what's the name of your podcast?
Degrees of Separation.
Degrees of Separation podcast. Veronica, thank you so much for joining me again on Hello Tech Pros. I really value your startup story and just your honesty of it's not all fruit, right? It's a lot of just planting seeds and then giving it that growth period of just waiting for stuff to happen. But it's a journey. And even though on the outside, some of us may look at somebody and say, oh my gosh, they've got so many things going on, like it's impossible, I can never do it. When you really break it down step by step, like you have throughout this podcast, it inspires me that, yeah, it can be done. Right? We can do this. It's just going to take time and commitment to put it together. So thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
You bet. Tech Pros, start planting your seeds today, right? Quit worrying about what the fruit is going to be and just put something together. If you've been waiting on starting your idea, it doesn't take... You don't have to do it full time, right? You can do this on the side. You can put together a side hustle. You can just start planting seeds on the nights and the weekends, and don't kill yourself. Don't do too much. You got to temper your time and prioritize the things that are most important to you. But if you don't start, then you're never going to have anything to grow. And you don't need an entire orchard. Maybe you just need one little plant to show you that you can build something, that you can plant something and have some growth and eventually get some fruit out of it. So take a look this weekend, take a look next week at what's that first little seed that you want to plant and put it in the ground. See what happens. You've been listening to Veronica Kirin, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/146. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Entrepreneurship Saturday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I will not be talking about work because it's Sunday being unplugged. On Monday, we'll get motivated once again to face the week with Motivation Monday, followed by Tuesday, productivity, Wednesday, leadership, Thursday, technology, Friday, people communication, and Saturday, back to our entrepreneurship. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.